What a weekend we had in Portimao, here in the second round of the 2025 EuroCup season. What a change from the Red Bull Ring, where Campos Racing found themselves as the most competitive team, miles ahead of MP Motorsport, the dominators of the first round in Austria. That means that we had 3 new race winners in the second weekend of the year, with Jessica Rasquedo and Ernesto Rivera winning, taking the honors for Campos Racing, as well as James Egozzi taking that sweet first victory for Palou Motorsport in the regular season. This, of course, also means that we have a total of 5 race winners in 5 races that we've had so far this season. What a number! 3 different winners in the 3 first races in 2023, 4 in the first 4 in 2024, and now we break our new record. So we found ourselves before the opportunity to extend this even more in Paul Ricard. We could have a 6th winner in 6 races, or even 7th winner in 7 races, and there's no lack of candidates for that. But reviewing, going back to what happened here in Portimao, again, we found a new championship leader, Ernesto Rivera, who was very competitive the whole weekend, found himself in the first position of the championship, held by the misfortune of Mattia Colnaghi, who was still quick despite the issues suffered by MP Motorsport, but who suffered a few penalties which dropped him several positions and prevented him from taking more points. The Italian-Argentinian driver is bullish and willing to fight back to get those points back, and he is confident that he can do it. Back in Paul Ricard, the whole squad of MP Motorsport know that they have a chance to fight in France, and so after Portimao, that's what they will be looking for. And there is a very good chance that we will see a fantastic weekend in France. Why? Because we are having a fantastic crop of new rookies who every weekend, every race are giving it their all and challenging the standings. They are challenging the more veteran drivers, and they are making life difficult for them. We have, of course, in Portimao, we had that first weekend of the year with 3 races, with that system, with that idea that we brought from the Spanish Winter Championship, which we will bring back in Paul Ricard. So next, 3 more races, and that means a lot more action to enjoy on what will be the 3rd round of the 2025 EUROCUP-3 season. Join us and enjoy it with us.
Sunny south of France. You can't beat it, especially when there's motorsport in town. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to what's set to be an electric 3rd event of the season for the EuroCup-3 Championship for 2025. And what a place we find ourselves. We find ourselves at the Circuit Paul Ricard, which is in the south of France. It's one of the great venues, which is really going to test both car and driver, particularly with beautiful weather conditions here in France. It's going to be quite the event. Good morning, everybody. Scott Woodward here to guide you through all the action on the English field. We're going to hear from Alex Garcia very shortly down in pit lane. And I have to say, looking at the qualifying times, we should be anticipating 3 very, very exciting and very close races, particularly with half the field covered by just over a second in that qualifying session. Of course, the championship battle at the top is looking pretty tight as well. We come into this weekend with just 7 points, about sort of, what was that, after qualifying at least, about 9 points covering the top three, and Esther Rivera, the championship leader, extending it by a point after taking pole position. But the likes of Kasper Stucker, Mattia Colnaghi, and Valerio Rinicella are certainly going to be in the mix as well. Good morning, everybody. Cars are making their way onto the circuit round to the grid. And I think given how close qualifying has been so far, it's going to be a very exciting prospect, particularly for all the teams involved. And Esther Rivera looking to try and keep up his form from last time at Portimao. And if he's able to do so and keep up that good form, he's certainly going to want to try and take his second win of the season. He took his first win of the championship back last time at Portimao, and he's looking to try and do that once again as well. We're joining me in the pit lane, as always, for EUROCUP-3 is our amigo Alex Garcia. Buenos dias, mi amigo, down in pit lane. It's looking nice and warm, nice and dry, and also not as windy as it has been in previous events too as well. How is the vibe down there this morning at Paul Ricard in what's beautiful conditions? And considering how close it is in qualifying, how excited are people down on the ground to see what could be a really exciting prospect with the front few guys in the championship battling for supremacy and for victory out there this morning in race 1?
Hi, Scott. When I heard you saying it's nice and warm, I think that's an understatement, because we're going to, let's say enjoy. We're going to enjoy the heat in this still spring here in the south of France, but it definitely feels like summer. But yes, if there's one thing that's hotter than the weather, it's definitely the fight at the top of the standings. So we're seeing Ernesto Rivera doing a great job in Portimao, and as well here in France in the first qualifying. And of course, starting from pole position, I wouldn't say it's unexpected, but we were not perhaps counting him as the favorite at the beginning of the season, and he is leading the championship, doing a fantastic job, starting from pole position with Mattia Colnaghi next to him in the first row, which of course means one thing. And as you know very well, Scott, Campos suffered, Campos was rather more competitive in Portimao. MP suffered a little bit more in Portugal, but they are again competitive here. So that means we have the good old fight, good old duel between the two big teams of the championship at the top of their game this weekend, which is fantastic because that means we have more cars that could potentially aim for the win. So that's more fun for us.
Certainly is, and when you look at the competitiveness throughout qualifying as well, both Campos and their satellite team, Griffin Corvette Campos, up there in the top 10, taking a lot of the positions up at the top of the field. It was mixing it with MP. One team that surprised me a little bit that's off the pace considering how quick they've been and taken a win so far this season with James Agozzi is Palou Motorsport. Their best car is only 10th on the grid, courtesy of the American. Not really enjoying as much as well because the rest of their drivers are down in the 20s. So what do you think it is with Palou? Is it possibly down to inexperience in the championship or possibly just not finding the route in the setup? Or is it simply the fact that the likes of Campos and MS have done this several times before, they've got a tiny bit more experience? Why do you think it is that Palou are struggling a little bit in these conditions and at this circuit in particular?
Paul Ricard is a circuit, as you know, where there's a lot of testing going on, so teams that have more experience have tested here a lot, drivers that have more experience have tested here a lot, and because it is longer, when you have less testing time, you have a lot less time to do laps, which means that any lack of experience is noticeable. We've been talking about this to some of the teams, both here and in Formula 4 as well, and both point at the same thing. So in terms of Palou's performance, clearly it has to be at least partially due to that, but it is also true that we have to remember that they are not yet, at least, at the level of Campos and MP. They can be sometimes, they can have a good race, a good weekend, but throughout the whole season, I think they're still finding their footing. I'm hoping that maybe by the end of the year or the beginning of next year, they can be a big force to be reckoned with. But I'm not sure if they can still do this whole season fighting for a championship. But we should not discount them. There's still another qualifying tomorrow. There's still going to be another race tomorrow. There's the sprint race, of course, later this afternoon. So we know that James Agozzi is a very, very competitive driver. And if he's starting from a good position, which he would with the reverse grid, he could very well defend his position. He did that in Portimao. Yes, he was not particularly happy about it. He said, we don't want to win reverse grids. We don't want to defend our positions. We want to fight them and win them on track. But they will still take it. They will still do their best to get those points because those points count at the end of the season. But yes, I think, MP and Campos are half a step ahead. It's normal, we expected it, so we just have to see what other teams like Palau can, little by little, try to do and try to get closer, which I think they will, but let's give them time.
Yeah, also we can keep in that conversation as well. Santalot Racing and DriveX. Of course, Santalot with their best driver on the grid, Garrett Berry in 12th and Oscar Wirtz in 16th. So they've got some work to do to get themselves up the order. One thing that really fascinates me, I think it should be a great thing, is that we've got the top 4 in the championship in the first 2 rows on the grid. Ernesto Rivera in not that particular order. Ernesto Rivera, Mattia Colnaghi, Kasper Stucker and Valerio Rinicella. I think this could be a real opportunity, not just for Rivera and Colnaghi to take another victory, but you've also got the second row, drivers that haven't yet won, but they're up there in the championship. Kasper Stucker and Valerio Rinicella. They've come close more than once in the season so far, and this could be a real opportunity for them to get a good start, get themselves in front of both Rivera and Colnaghi, and we could be getting potentially, if it all works out that way, Alex, maybe even our 6th different winner in 6 races, which I guess is pretty unprecedented given how competitive it's been all the way from the start of the season. As you said in your little vignette, it was 3 from 3 in 2023, 4 from 4 in 2024. Now we've gone 5 from 5. There's every real chance with this, particularly with Stucker or Rinicella, we could go 6 from 6 in this first race.
It's perfectly possible. We mentioned that. That was part of the talk of the paddock after the last race in Portimao. People were saying 5 out of 5 is impressive, and nobody was discounting this becoming 6 or potentially even 7. It might be a little bit trickier, but 6 or 7 different winners in the 6 or 7 first races of the season, that's entirely possible. And especially with that very, very competitive second row that we have on the grid, with drivers who have maybe a little bit more experience, that could come in handy in these conditions today here in Port Ricard. I still have a lot of faith, a lot of trust in that first row. They have been performing fantastically this season. Both Rivera and Colnaghi have been doing a great job. I think both have the right amount of pressure as well to perform. You know, that kind of pressure that pushes you to do better because you have to, but it's not destroying you. And that's helping them, and they're managing it well. So they should be still the favorites, not just because they are on the first row. But let's see what happens, because Paul Ricard allows for some measure of overtaking. We saw great moves last year, you'll remember that. And of course, we're looking forward to more of that this year.
Yeah, definitely. And also as well, we look at the third row as well. 2 more race winners who have proven themselves so far this season as well. Maciej Gladish and Jesse Carrasquedo Jr. That's going to be key to watch out for. 2 more things quickly to talk about. Once for the fact that the front half of the grid, the first 13, 14 cars, covered by just over a second. That just shows really how competitive this year's EUROCUP-3 field really is. And the second point I was going to make is, this is a circuit as well, particularly when we've got quite high temperatures over there, what, 26, 27 degrees. It's a very front-limited circuit, given that we've got lots of fast corners. But on top of that also, you've got those very highly abrasive runoff areas as well. That's going to be key also in that sense, because if drivers start taking risks and taking liberties with track limits, they're going to find some very abrasive tarmac really wide out, particularly the red areas that get incredibly super grippy. That can really tear up tyres, particularly in what's going to be an already tricky day for the drivers out there this weekend, as it is so warm and so hot on track. That's going to be a real test for them.
Yes, exactly. And now that you were mentioning that that runoff area, this is very interesting for the people who are watching, because this is not necessarily so well known. Essentially, those blue and red stripes at the outside of the track, they are painted with a paint that has an alloy of different metals, which is prepared and designed to be more abrasive for the tire. So the reason it is more abrasive is because it's using this metal mixed with the painting. So if you go wide, you're definitely going to struggle with those tires, at least a little bit. It's designed to punish the drivers so that they do not take too many liberties. We know that it can still happen, and it will most likely happen at some point, but they cannot go too much and too far, because if they do, well, you know what happens. Your tires may not make it to the end, especially, as you were mentioning, with these hot temperatures that we're having here in Port Ricard, and they will only increase. So if anything, I think the drivers are lucky that the long race is now and the sprint race is later, because that one is going to be scorching.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're just getting ready for the formation now. So very quickly, Alex, quick prediction. Of course, the top 4 of the championship on the top 4 positions in the race. Who do you think's going to get this one potentially and take victory in this one before we get started?
Well, as I like to say, Scott, I like to bet peace for the winners. So my P goes for probably Ernesto Rivera. Today he has a good momentum going on, and he will probably want to prove a few things to a certain Dr. Helmut Marko.
Hopefully so. Gracias, mi amiga. Que te vaya bien. Hopefully we'll see you later on for interviews as well as anything in the pit lane. Cars then make their way off onto the formation lap around the Paul Ricard circuit. We're using the same venue that the Grand Prix Championship uses, which is Circuit 1C V2, 3.6 miles or 5.8 kilometres, as the field of 28 EuroCup-3 cars make their way off onto the formation lap. And we'll go through the grid in terms of how they will line up for this first race. So after an exciting and close qualifying session, Ernesto Rivera, the race winner from race 3 at Portimao, the second regular length race, will start in pole position. He was quickest by a tenth and a half from Matteo Colnaghi for MP Motorsport. Then it's Kasper Stucker and Valerio Rinicella in third and fourth on the second row together. So the top four in the championship all together in the first two rows, and they were only covered by roughly around about 0.2 of a second. Jesse Carrasquedo and Magic Gladish, the other two race winners in the field, up in the top six in fifth and sixth position. You can't also figure out James Agotti's back in 10th. It's Enzo Tarbanichko, one of the Red Bull back drivers, who starts in 7th position alongside Jules Carranza. Then it's Emerson Fittipaldi Jr. and James Agotzi, the other race winner from early in the season. Outside the top 10, Francisco Macedo, Ford Griffin Core, and Garrett Berry, the first of the Santalok cars, starting in 12th. Andres Cardenas for MP Motorsport, and then it's two of the KCL MP Motorsport cars, Alexander Abkhazhava, the Kazakhstani driver, and Kai Darianani from the UK, starting in 15th. Oscar Wirtz, who is the son of former F1 racer and Le Mans winner Alex Wirtz and brother of Charlie Wirtz. He will start as 16th on the grid. Then it's Owen Tangavellu in the DXR car. That's the DriveX satellite team, starting in 17th. Lorenzo Castillo in the Santalok car, number 10, starts 18th. And rounding up the top 20 is Preston Lambert and Alessandro Famolaro from Venezuela in a DriveX pair to round off the top 20 places. Luciano Bonanno for Palou Motorsport and his satellite teammate Lenny Reed for Sparco Polo MS starts in 22nd, then Isaac Barashi and Christian Cantu, followed by Zach Sculler down in 25th, not where he would like to be, alongside Alceo Feldman, who is dovetailing his efforts in EuroCup-3 racing in the Porsche Carrera Cup Brazil, where his car is usually coloured in the paint scheme of Lightning McQueen. And then it's the Hellberg brothers, Emil and Linus of LA Racing. Of course, they're entrepreneurs. They're the oldest drivers in the field, but they're simply just to have fun and race because they can. They're starting at the back of the field, Emil ahead of Linus. So 15 minutes, so half an hour plus one lap in this championship. And you get 25 points for a victory, 18 for second, 15 for third, 12 for fourth, 10 for fifth, and then 8, 6, 4, 2, 1. You get 2 points for pole position and 1 point for the fastest lap as well. We also have the sprint race coming up, which is later on, and that's a slightly smaller point system, 10 down to 1, and that will be an interesting mix to add an extra bit of spice into the championship, a slightly slower race of 20 minutes plus one lap on that too. So the cars crawl their way up to the grid, and it is the Red Bull back driver of Ernesto Rivera, the man who won last time out in the last race, most recent race at Portimao. And he's looking to try and hold on from the inside of the front row from Matteo Colnaghi. Then we have the Griffin Core car of Kasper Stucker and Valerio Rinicella. Of course, Stucker and Rinicella yet to take a race victory so far this season, but literally the 4 drivers around them all have so far. Rivera, Colnaghi, and then Carrasquedo Jr. and Gladish in 6th position. Watch James Agotzi from P10. Of course, Santalok want to try and rise as high as they can from 12th on the grid. And the DriveX car's really off the pace. Oscar Wirtz, the best of them, back in 16th. So watch for him to try and rise through the order, get into the top 10. It's getting ever increasingly warm here at Paul Ricard. Looking at the temperatures coming into the weekend, 27 degrees, about 60% humidity. It really is going to be pretty tough out there on this full Grand Prix circuit. So, pole position on the right-hand side, Ernesto Rivera as the green flag flies. Matteo Colnaghi alongside him for MP Motorsport. We're all set then for race 1 of round 3 of EuroCup 2025 at Circuit Paul Ricard in France. Lights out, and it's a really poor start from Rivera. He doesn't get away from pole position, and Colnaghi gets the better jump down towards turn 1 for the first time. And also Colnaghi tries to defend from Stucker, forces him to the inside line. They sprint down towards turn 1 for the first time. There's cars every which way down towards the left-hander, and it will be Rivera who is down in 2nd place. A much better start for Colnaghi, the Italian in front, as they squeeze through. There's several cars taking to the runoff area as they make their way down towards that very first kind of crunch point on the circuit, not literally, hopefully, of the Virage de la Hotel and Virage du Camp. And it is going to be Colnaghi with the much better getaway that will lead them through the opening corners and away on towards the Mistral Straight for the first time, where these cars can really start to stretch their legs. They turn their way out of the Virage du Camp and the Virage du Saint-Baume, and on now onto the Mistral Straight, broken up by that chicane Nord in the middle of the circuit, and Colnaghi immediately trying to get himself out of the draft. He doesn't want to get the tow from Ernesto Rivera behind, and one car that's gone around. That, I think, is number 11 that's gone around. It's one of the DriveX machines. And number 11 is going to be, if I'm right, Oscar Wirtz, in fact. Oscar Wirtz, who was the highest placed DriveX car in the field. He's already out, and that's down at Virage du Comte with issues for him. And it's Colnaghi that leads, Rivera in second place. Stucker has held third place for Griffincourt, fourth for Rinicella, fifth place for Carrasquedo, and sixth place for Jules Caranta. Not a great start for Maciej Gladic. He's down 2 spots from where he began in 8th place, but it looks as though we are going safety car, and no surprise because of the fact that Oscar Wirtz's car is stranded down at Virage du Comte, and because of that, they're going to have to get it recovered. So, as we mentioned, it's a half-an-hour race plus 1 lap, which means it's a lengthy time to keep these Hankook tyres in check. And the steering wheel is off on the DriveX car of Oscar Wirtz. He is going no further. It looks like there's damage to the right rear as well. It must have been some contact damage to the rear wing also, I can see. Looks as though he's had an incident which has certainly put him out of contention. That would have been really heavily mid-pack, considering that he started originally back in 16th on the grid, so literally mid-pack around cars around him. I'm going to see also, I think the other car that potentially might have been involved, because there were cars around him quite close. I've seen that also Alexander Abkajava and Owen Tangavelu have also dropped down. Abkajava, the KCL MP Motorsport driver, and Owen Tangavelu, the Vietnamese driver, who is in one of the satellite team cars for DXR. They are pushing Oscar Wirtz's car away. I think he's had to reattach the steering wheel so he can make it happen. So as they cross the line to end lap number 1, under safety car here at Paul Ricard, it is Matteo Colnaghi with the much better start off the line after Ernesto Rivera bogged down, and the Red Bull liveried Campos car just didn't get the best of starts. He managed to quickly engage the clutch for the second phase of the start and held on, defending from Kasper Stucker. So it is Colnaghi that leads, Rivera in second place, Stucker in third, Rinicella in fourth, and Carrasquedo in fifth, followed by Caranta, Tarvanichkul, who's up to 7th place. So he started 7th and stays in 7th place. Any big movers in the field in the top 10? Now, everyone in the top 10 appears to be where they should play Motorsport driver. That is Luciano Morano in number 5. Luciano himself started 21st. So both of those drivers moving up nicely. Morano at 16th. And Alex has some news from standing pit lane. Alex, a very action-packed start particularly, but the key thing was there that Ernesto Rivera didn't get the start he needed, bogged down, and now it's Colnaghi in front. Rivera got the clutch in the second phase of the start, but that was really crucial that either Ernesto Rivera just didn't get the start he needed with the bite point, or was simply just asleep when the lights went out.
Exactly, Scott. That's what I wanted to comment on, because we saw it right from here, not from the pit wall, because you cannot stand on the pit wall when the race start is going on. But we saw clearly how it was that second phase. The first reaction, the bite point was fine, but probably it slipped a little bit for too long, and we saw how he was losing ground in that first few meters. And I want to say, I know there's such a thing as the commentator's curse. I'm not sure if that extends to reporter's curse, because it seems that I said, well, you know, I trust Ernesto Rivera could have a chance to win. And, well, the beginning hasn't been perhaps what he was expecting. So, I don't know, maybe we should call it the reporter's curse as well.
So it's your fault why you got the bad start. Okay, we'll give it to you on that one then, in that sense. Interesting enough, though, the top 4... Exactly. The top 4 in the championship, though, of course, still in the top 4 positions. Big movers, as I mentioned, the 2 of the Palou drivers who started way down outside the top 20, they're now up into the top 20 inside it, both Morano and Sculler. So they're starting to work up a little bit. James Zagotzi still the lead Palou driver in 10th in the order, but great starts from Morano and Sculler to pick up a few cars. And I suspect they might have been helped by the fact that it looks like Oscar Wirtz was tangled up with maybe Owen Tangavelu and Alexander Abkajava. They were kind of together in that mid-pack. They were still watching Oscar Wirtz's car being pushed away. So I wonder possibly if there was a bit of a collision between the 3 of them. We haven't got a replay. And there is also an MP Motorsport car that's been pushed off as well. And I think that is actually Alexander Abkajava's car, number 12. Yes, it is. So it looks like the 2 of them came together. So not a great start for Oscar Wirtz or for Alexander Abkajava.
It does seem like it's one of those situations in the midfield where there's a tangle between a couple of drivers, then the rest have to avoid it, and then there's always one driver in particular who manages to avoid all the issues, and he gets the most out of it. So it seems that it is the Palou Motorsport guys who have done the best. Let's say they've used the situation to their own advantage. So we know that the car is competitive. We were mentioning that before the start. It's decently competitive. They have been doing good steps forward. So I'm not necessarily surprised, but it is nice to see sometimes these drivers who make good use of these situations, because otherwise motorsport can be a bit boring if positions don't change like this. There's always that one starter, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, the pep talk we gave them and the tap up that we gave them pre-race, we wanted to see them do well and see it get faster. Certainly seemed to have worked, particularly for the likes of Morano and Muscala. They picked their way through some of the mid-pack shenanigans that went on, which seems to have compromised both. It's taken out both Oscar Wirtz and Alexander Abkajava, and also I think in that process to compromise Owen Tankabelli, who is carried on, but he's right at the back of the field in 26th. So the car racing under safety car. Gracias, Alex, for your update there. We'll, of course, come back to you when we have a moment if there is a break in the mix or any key information. So Matti Kolnagi then leading the way in car number 71, the MP Motorsport driver. He leads the top 10 at the moment from Ernesto Rivera in second place, Kasper Stucker in third, Valerio Rinicella in fourth, Jesse Carrasquedo in fifth position, Jules Caranta in sixth. He's the next highest of the Campos cars. Enzo Tarvanichkul, one of the Red Bull back drivers in the field. He's seventh. Maciek Gladic is down to eighth ahead of Emerson Fittipaldi Jr. And then James Igotzi, the best Palou Motorsport driver, basically exactly where he started in 10th position. And the rest of the order from 11th downwards, we have Macedo in 11th position, Cardenas in 12th, Kai Darianani in 13th, Garrett Berry 14th. Then we have Preston Lambert, the US driver, in 15th place. Then we've got those two drivers that have moved up in the first couple of laps, Luciano Morano in car number 5 for Palou Motorsport 16th, Zach Sculler 17th, and Isaac Barashi, Christian Cantu, and Lenny Reid, who started back in 27. He's up to 20th already. Then it's Alessandro Famolaro, the Venezuelan driver, in 21st, followed by Alceu Feldman in 22nd. Also moving up a couple of places are the two Hellberg brothers. Emil now ahead of Linus, despite starting at the back of the grid. Then we have Lorenzo Castillo, who also looks like he was caught up in some of that too. He was originally 18th on the grid. He's down to 25th. And then Owen Tankavelo is showing us the last driver, although he doesn't appear to have come through just yet to end lap number 2. So maybe he also suffered some damage, which had an issue as well that we've lost from that race. Alexander Abkajava and Oscar Wirtz, they are down at the Virage du Camp runoff area behind the barriers. So the field's stacking up because safety car lights are out and we're getting ready for a restart here. And of course, for those who haven't seen a safety car restart before, the safety car now pulls away. And this now means that Ernesto Rivera, Matti Kolnagi, now becomes the safety car. He now decides whether he wants to get the restart done. He can choose effectively whenever he wants to go. He can go as early or within reason, as late as he likes. And it looks as though he's not waiting around. He's actually got a really good start exiting out of the complex, heading towards the final few corners. He's just got himself a good restart through exiting Virage du Bon d'Or, now through Courbe de Galaban and in towards Virage du Pont. And the restart here, and back under green flag conditions. Racing is back underway here at Paul Ricard with Matti Kolnagi leading the charge. Across the line they go then to begin another lap. 20 minutes and change plus 1 lap as they continue on under green flag conditions. Now they're past the timing line. Now they can overtake. And this could be redemption potentially for Ernesto Rivera if he can get close to the back end of that MP Motorsport car and get himself in the mix. So on the restart, end of lap, onto lap 4 now. Kolnagi leads, Rivera in second, Stucker in third, Rinicella in fourth, Carrasquedo in fifth, then Caranta, Tarvanichkul, Gladish, Emerson Fittipaldi Jr. and James Igotzi in the top 10. And wind their way out through Virage du Camp, single file, no dramas here. And it looks as though that Rivera is going with Kolnagi in his early stages, out of the complex at Virage du Camp and onto the Mistral straight, and you can see immediately Kolnagi is not comfortable on the racing line because he's trying to weave, not to block, but to try and break the toe as Rivera follows in his wheel tracks down towards the Nord chicane. Is there going to be a chance to possibly try and set him up for a move? He looks to the outside as Kolnagi goes defensive into the apex of the first part of the chicane. But if he stays close here, there could be a chance to make an attack on the second part of the Mistral straight, down towards that flat-out right-hander at Senior. Still nose to tail. MP versus Campos, up towards Senior. Two of the other Red Bull cars are going side by side. That's Caranta and Tarvanichkul going wheel to wheel for 6 positions, whilst one of the Red Bull liveried cars is up there battling for the lead. The other two are fighting amongst each other as they come back in towards the Double Droit du Beausset and then in towards Virage du Bon d'Or. It's kind of winding section of corners here. It's very high-speed circuit. I'd say it's very much a front-limited circuit, given that you've got so many fast corners. And I think there's been a change because Tarvanichkul I think he stayed ahead of Caranta, in fact. So the two Red Bull drivers behind battling over 6th position haven't changed yet. out of Virage DuPont onto the pit straight once again on the first completed lap at racing speeds after the restart. And again, you can see in the background Colnaghi weaving this way and that, trying to break the toe from Rivera, who is determined to get back to the front after stuttering at the start and holding on to that in there too. Through the opening few corners, through the Este la Verrerie. Now the short shoot towards Virage de la Hotel, and then Virage du Camp. And the gap is only half a second between the top two. Fastest lap of the race on that first proper flying lap around did go to Ernesto Rivera. The toe would have certainly helped. You got a 2 minutes 1.172. In qualifying, they were doing 1 minute low 159s. So they're about 2 seconds off the qualifying pace. And any more movers? One driver is actually Caranta's dropping down the order. What's happened to Jules Caranta? He has not come through. And last time we saw him, he was behind Enzo Tarvanichkul. So the third of the Red Bull cars has gone tumbling down the timing order in 17th across the line. So something's happened there. Something could potentially also happen for third place as Kasper Stucker for Griffin Corp is holding station ahead of he's second of the MP Motorsport drivers, Valerio Rinicella. He's nose to tail. Also trying to close in is Jesse Carrasquedo, who took the victory last time out at Portimao in race number 1. And it's not his first dance in the championship. He's raced here a couple of times before in this championship. So at the moment, it is MP Motorsport, and then it's 2 of the Campos Racing teams. You've got the main Campos Racing squad of Ernesto Rivera, and then the Griffin Corps by Campos car of Kasper Stucker. Towards the end of another racing lap. Everyone just starting to spread out a little bit more here. We're heading towards half distance already. The safety car will have certainly kept them busy for a couple of laps. It also would have helped with tyre life, but also trying to keep temperature and pressure into those tyres under safety car would have been a challenge in itself. Although I don't think temperature would have been too much of an issue, given how hot it is out there, with temperatures in the kind of mid to high 20s over in the south of France. On to another lap. Lap 6. Colnaghi, Rivera, Stucker, Rinicella, Carrasquedo. Rivera knows he's got to try and keep ahead. He's already ahead, of course, of the likes of Stucker and Rinicella, but he knows that Colnaghi will be able to get a large haul of points to close back into the championship. Of course, he had those 2 extra pole position points from qualifying earlier on this morning, so he extended his gap over Stucker to 7 points, and his lead over Colnaghi to 8. But if Colnaghi wins, it essentially kind of negates all of that advantage. It's 25 points for a win, plus if you get the fastest lap of the race, which currently is held by Jesse Carrasquedo on a 2 minute 1.112, that will certainly close the gap in much further. If he can get the fastest lap of the race and actually win the race, it will be 26 points to Colnaghi's, so to Rivera's 18. So it'll be 8 more points scored, and he'll effectively completely negated the advantage that he has back from what should be 8 points down to 1, provided he does get the fastest lap. Top 6 just steadily closing back together. The battle of 7th backwards is also looking pretty close. That's Maciej Gladic, Francisco Machado, James Agozzi, and Andres Cardenas. And Cardenas has lost a place to James Agozzi, so the Pilot Motorsport driver, the top of the Pilot cars, in 9th position at the moment. Of course, you do have, of course, our rookie category as well. Any driver that has a on the rear wing and their number panels, if they have a white background, then they are rookie drivers. If they have a black background, then they are drivers that have had more than a season's worth of experience. And these rookies first and second shows how much of an incredible rookie crop we have this season in EUROCUP-3. As Colnaghi continues to hold station in the lead. The gap was 0.6 of a second at the last stripe. One driver I think that's dropped down the order might be, well, Isaac Barashi's come up to 17th. Across the line they come again. Lead gap has gone out to about 8.5 tenths. Enzo Tarvanichkul in the tow has just taken the fastest lap as well. So the driver in 6th position, the Thai driver with the Red Bull backing from Campos Racing. 6th position, but in the tow, fastest lap of the race, using a little bit of clear air to his advantage. We've gone past half distance, 14.5 odd minutes to go. Let's just see if Colnaghi can keep up this pace here. It's all looking pretty line astern at this point. You just know that one small slip from any of them in this lead group and the cars around them are going to take full advantage. Cars in front will start to pull away. Cars behind will get themselves into the tow to try and get past. And that's the key thing. The fact that if you go back to 4th position, Rinicella's in Stucker's toe, but Stucker's in Rivera's toe, and Rivera's in Colnagi's toe. So the fact they're getting drafts off each other means that it kind of negates the advantage. It's all about corner exits, really, and how much speed they can carry through the apex is going to be the key thing. As they make their way out of the chicane Nord, back towards Senior, that flat-out right-hander, which, if you ever watch some of the GT racing that happens, maybe in GT Challenge when they have the Paul Ricard 6 hours, that entire straight is unbroken. So they hit this corner at incredible speeds. Of course, for the single-seaters here, considering that we have drivers as young as 15 or 16 years old in the championship, they run the more, I guess, the slightly more traditional Grand Prix layout, which F1 has used in recent years, which has that chicane in the middle of it to break things up. Still, Colnaghi with the advantage. Gap has come down from what was, it's shrunk a little bit. It was 0.8. It's now back down to half a second. So Rivera's keeping in Colnaghi's wheel tracks. Rest of the field comes pouring through. Let's just look at lap times this time by to see how Rivera's closed in a little bit, because that definitely looks closer than 0.8 of a second. Across the line they go. It's 0.6, and Rivera's now just taken the fastest lap of the race. That's pretty crucial. So 2 minutes, 0.991 for Rivera. He now steals the fastest lap point for the moment. And the fact he's also, ironically, getting the toe down the straights from Colnaghi will certainly not be lost on, the irony certainly won't be lost on Mattia when he finds that out. But Rivera pushing hard to make sure that that Red Bull car stays not only at the top of the times, but also at the top of the point standings. If he can get himself to the top of the timing screen and get himself into the lead, that will be even better. Again, we haven't had a repeat winner in 2025 so far. Mattia Colnaghi took his victory back at the first race of the season in the Red Bull Ring. And Esther Rivera is our most recent race winner, having won race 2 at Portimao last time out. And you can see that just visibly, Rivera is closer to Colnaghi than Stucker is to Rivera. And he might be falling back into the clutches of 4th place Valerio Rinicella. Through the Nord chicane. Top 6 altogether. Caranta and Carrasquedo are not too far away. Well, Caranta's dropped down the order to 13th, and he is currently 5th in the points coming into the weekend on 47. So if he stays where he is, not only will he not score, but he'll lose out dramatically to the drivers around him in the standings. Make the way back towards the top of the circuit at Debose. And this Paul Ricard circuit is well known for being and it was in the past quite a heavily used testing venue for Formula One. Of course, now these days it's been kind of, in more recent years and decades, it's been kind of revamped to be even a Grade 1 FIA circuit. So F1 has come back, the French Grand Prix has returned. We've had sports car racing here no end, and of course the likes of EUROCUP-3 and Spanish F4 that you'll see later on this weekend as well. We'll all come back here to this excellent facility. See the timing tower on the right-hand side scrolling through the positions, but we have the timing tower on the left, which gives us immediate positions. Gap is still roughly 6.5 to 7 tenths between the top 2. And yeah, that everyone's starting to spread out a little bit now. Everyone's sort of settling into this race with 10.5 minutes to go plus a lap. So what we mean by that, just for those who need the knowledge, is that once we hit the timer to 0, that is not the checkered flag. On the lap they hit 0, they will come past the pits. That's when they'll start the final lap of the race. So they get 30 minutes plus an extra lap. Once they come past the first time they come past the start and finish line, once the timer has hit 0. So it's not like other championships where as soon as you hit 0, that's the final lap, that's it. So if you're in a battle, let's say, I don't know, particularly, it'll be Colnaghi and Rivera, it could benefit them. No benefit at all to Alessio Feldman, who sadly is being pushed back into the garage. He is out of the race. The Sparco Polo motorsport driver not having a great start to his weekend, and he will have to try and come back again in race number 2 later on, particularly the sprint race that comes up later on. And it's closed up a little bit in the top 2. Rivera using the toe. He's got the gap down to under half a second. He's 4 tenths in the slipstream. You can see the heat haze coming up off the circuit as they charge back up towards Senior. And again, Rivera will be tucked in the slipstream, trying to get closer to Colnaghi. And Kasper Stucker is 1.5 seconds away from 3rd, but he might have a bigger battle to fight in Valerio Rinicella behind in the 2nd of the MP Motorsport cars. And this has been that perennial battle in this championship, but in this kind of part of racing and single-seaters. MP versus Campos. And yes, the Kasper Stucker car is the Griffin core by Campos car, so it's a satellite team. but still looking pretty strong. In fact, his teammates, Jesse Carrasquedo Jr. 5th at the moment, and Francisco Macedo down in 8th. So they're looking pretty strong at the moment. The other Campos cars outside that, it is Jules Caranta recovering in 13th place. And the other Campos car is, of course, Enzo Tarvanichkul, and he is in 6th. So those Campos cars, all of them in the Red Bull colours. So all of them Red Bull supported athletes. And Rivera is certainly driving like he has a point to prove here. Turn their way through the complex of Virage de la Hotel into Virage du Camp. And if anything, I think that Rivera is a little bit closer this time by compared to Colnaghi. Compared to the previous couple of laps, I think that Rivera might have a good chance to get himself right into the slipstream and have a good chance to attack here. And it all depends on how much Colnaghi feels he has to go defensive. Not quite yet at this point. We saw it earlier in the race, remember, when we had Colnaghi and Rivera nose to tail, and Colnaghi had to go right to the inside in the middle of the road to defend from Rivera behind him. But not this time. As the race starts to tick down, slightly tighter approach through the second part of North Chicane. He took more curb through there, but that's possibly lost him a tiny bit of momentum. As Colnaghi immediately goes to the racing line, to the outside of the circuit, driver's left, and then flat out through Senior. No real hint of a lift. These cars have got the grip and the downforce to do that. Stuck it in 3rd place, Rinicella in 4th, Carrasquedo 5th, and then you've got behind them another quintet of rookies with Tarvanichkul 6th, Gladish 7th, Macedo 8th, James Agozzi 9th, and Andreas Cardenas rounding out the top 10. And Agozzi still the top Polo Motorsport driver in 9th position. Santaloc, their best driver is Garrett Berry in 12th. And then DriveX still has Christian Cantu up in 17th place. This is not a great race for DriveX at all, or any of their drivers from their satellite team, considering that Cantu is 17th, Famolaro 19th, and 21st for Preston Lambert. And Owen Tangavello in the DXR car out of the race, as is also, of course, Oscar Wirtz, who was out on the opening lap. This is, at the moment, a bit of a weekend to forget for DriveX. It's only just started. Got a lot of work to do to try and make that better. Just under 6.5 minutes plus a lap. Still Colnaghi with the lead by 0.6 of a second as they come back towards the complex at Hotel and Camp, and then out to Saint-Baume and down the first part of that lengthy Mistral straight. And it looks as though on this lap so far that Colnaghi's managed to create enough of a gap, but he's not bothered by Rivera in the slipstream. So the Red Bull back driver's going to have to find a bit of a strategy here in these last 6 minutes and a +1 lap to close back in again. And everything's seemingly staying status quo. Hopefully I'm trying to say that to almost force something to happen, because it's been a pretty straightforward race out there. Apart from the drama we had for Oscar Wirtz, there's not been really any sort of flashpoints, if you like. Not that it's been a dull race, but it's been a race that has not been as eventful as some of the other races so far this season. Back towards Senior. Colnaghi, Rivera, and Stucker, Rinicella, and Carrasquedo. That's the top 5, covered by 2.7 seconds. Tarvanichkul's not too far away in P6. That's the lead group. They've separated themselves by a couple of seconds back to the fight that's going on for 7th place downwards. Maciej Gladic back in 7th is in a little bit of what I call no man's land. He's 2 seconds away from Tarvanichkul in 6th, but he's also another 3 seconds ahead of Macedo in 8th behind him. And James Agozzi's less than a second behind Macedo, with Cardenas a further second back as well. Closing in on the end of this race. And Colnaghi is doing everything he needs to secure his 2nd win of the season. But it's not over yet. 0.7 of a second between the top 2. No new fastest lap of the race just yet. Of course, Rivera still has that fastest lap point after he took the 2 points bonus for pole as well this morning in qualifying. And Stucker, let's look at his lap times so far, how he's closing the gap in. He's about 0.7 away from Rivera, so maybe his story's not quite done yet. There's every possibility he might be able to cause a bit of factor here. Maybe he's started to look after his tyres a little bit. Looking at Casper's results from the season so far. He came into the weekend second in the championship. He came into this race 8 points behind Rivera. Sorry, 7 points behind Rivera, forgive me, because the two extra bonus points for pole. And for the first time in a while, Kolnagi just trying to weave to break the toe. So he didn't feel comfortable enough to stay on the racing line because he knew Rivera was close enough to be a threat. And there is Kasper Stucker, the Polish driver. I know we've got some of the Polish fans in the chat watching on YouTube, cheering on their boy in third position. And so far, Kasper Stucker has had 3 podiums, 2 third places, and his best of the year so far has been second place right at the start of the season in race 1 at Portimao, a race won by the man in front of the field, Matti Kolnagi. But Rivera, meanwhile, has had 1 win. He's stood on all 3 steps of the podium so far. He's had a win at Portimao in race 2, a second place in race 1 at Portimao, and a third place in the first race of the season at the Red Bull Ring. So the top 3 in the championship were all on the podium together in race 1 of the season, and since then they've stayed in the top 3 in the championship pretty much all the way through. That's despite the fact that both Rivera and Stucker had really poor results in the sprint race at Portimao. I remember that was because we had I think there was a coming together between Caranta and Rivera at Portimao in the sprint race, and Stucker just had a really poor result in general. But still no change at the front. 3/4 of a second now between Kolnagi and Rivera as they go on to another lap. This is lap 13 at Circuit Paul Ricard in the south of France. Beautiful warm temperatures. You can see the scenery in the background. Pure blue skies, bright warm sunshine. It is almost perfect conditions for motorsport. And it's been quite a bit of a mental chess game between these front few cars, trying to find themselves a better advantage at a circuit like this. Let's see what Kolnagi does this time. When he feels under threat, he does go to the inside of the circuit to try and defend and break the toe. And he's done it again, because he knows that off that corner, Rivera's a little bit better on the exit. And again, he's closing in, particularly on this straight. He's really closing in fact. He's close as he's ever been, I think. As close as he has been all race. And Rivera closing in under brakes again, in towards the North Chicane. I think we're going to get possibly this and 1 more lap. So 2 more laps in the books left to go at the end of this lap. Because I think they'll hit the timer before it hits 0. Then the next time they go by, that will be when they get the white flag, so to speak, in US racing terms. And Rivera is right back on the rear wing now with Matti Kolnagi. Has he been working for this one? He looks to the inside line. He forces Kolnagi to go defensive into Lebose and almost went round the outside into the double right-hander. But Kolnagi holds firm, and now you see, I think, wonder if Rivera was just keeping his powder dry, just holding back so the turbulent air from the car in front wasn't chewing up his tyres so much. And now as they come towards what will be the penultimate lap of the race, I think Rivera's woken up here. He's let Kolnagi dictate the pace for a moment, stayed with him, but he knew he had more tyre and pace underneath him, I think. Now he started to come back to underneath him, and now it's a proper 1v1 between Kolnagi and Rivera. And of course, remember, if these two fight each other hard enough, watch for the 4 cars behind. Stucker, Rinicella, Carrasquedo and Tarvanichkul. They're not out of this yet. They can still fight for a podium place. Stucker's broken away from that second trio of cars, led by Rinicella. And it's now 0.3 of a second between the top 2. A second covers the top 3, because Stucker's a further 7/10 back. But Ernesto Rivera, after stumbling at the start from pole position, dropping behind Kolnagi, has been chasing the MP Motorsport driver all the way through. And Kolnagi, the Italian, looking for his second win of the season. So too is Rivera. If Stucker gets involved, he could get his first and also become the 6th different winner from 6 races. The time has hit 0, so next time by we'll get the last lap board. But Rivera's been as close as he's ever been. And again, once again, going to the inside. And look at Stucker in the toe of Rivera. They weave from side to side, the top 3, trying to break that toe as much as they can. But they're pretty much locked in. And here comes Rivera. Down towards the North Chicane. He closes back in. And if he gets a good exit here, and gets a good run up through under brakes, he could really have a good run and attack through Senior. And up towards the Bose as he did last time by. It's a tighter exit, but slightly better momentum, I think, from initially Kolnagi, but Rivera is there. And again, look at that. He's weaving side to side. It's not blocking. He's trying to break the toe as much as he can. I think there is a point where it becomes a bit too much. But look at Stucker. Kasper Stucker in third position, attacking Rivera. Rivera's got no choice but to attack Kolnagi. And look at round the outside. Kasper Stucker going for second place. This could be an amazing move if he pulls it off. They're side by side. And look at that. Rivera's boxed in. What a move. That was fantastic. Kasper Stucker goes to second place on the penultimate lap of the race around the outside of double Bose of Ernesto Rivera. He boxed him in behind Kolnagi, took the line and said thank you very much. But Rivera's coming back at him on the inside. Up towards the left-hander, back into second place. All this is benefiting. Mattia Kolnagi squeezes him out to the edge of the road. There's a bit of contact, I think. But Rivera holds on. That was a bit cheeky from Rivera. But Stucker is now back to third place. And again, I said this. If the cars in front fight, watch for the cars behind. Rinicella, Carrasquedo and Tarvanichko. It's given Mattia Kolnagi a little bit of respite as they start the final lap of the race. Look at the background. Tarvanichko attacking Carrasquedo for fifth position. It's really kicking off on the final lap. So Kolnagi leads, Rivera in second. Kasper Stucker was briefly in second place for a fraction of a moment. And then Rivera fought back on the outside. But the battles are happening now behind. For fifth position, Tarvanichko is attacking Carrasquedo, the Mexican. Four position as they come back towards Virage du Hotel into Virage du Camp. And I think that because of that battling, it's given Kolnagi enough of the gap he needs to not be under threat from Rivera. And that's the thing, the harder you fight each other in the mix, the cars around take advantage, and it's really happened. Rivera and Stucker were so busy fighting amongst each other that it's now allowed Kolnagi to get the gap he needed, even though he is trying to weave to break the toe here as much as he can. And now you can see Stucker under attack again for Rinicella, as he was on the opening laps. Again, Stucker goes defensive, Rinicella goes to the outside of the racing line, and that sort of tighter entry into the first part of the chicane is going to compromise the exit for the second part. And Rinicella might possibly steal third place on the final lap with around about half a lap to go. Back towards Senior. Down towards the flat-out right-hander. Still Kolnagi, Rivera, then the fight for third. Stucker has only got half a lap and a few corners to hold on for Rinicella, but he's closing in pretty quickly. Is there going to be any last attack? Is there one last piece of attack here? As up the inside goes Rinicella. Stucker runs wide. He tries to go for the apex, almost made contact, runs over the runoff area, and Rinicella steals third position. Stucker tried to fight back, but he couldn't put himself alongside. And Valerio Rinicella steals potentially a podium place on the final lap. And look at the cars behind. Carrasquedo and Tarvanichko might make it a drag race for the podium if Stucker can't get a good exit. Through the final couple of corners, and is that in the background? Rivera's run wide. It's going to be a victory for Mattia Kolnagi, but what about second place? Kolnagi comes to it, and look at that. The Red Bull drivers drop back to fourth and fifth position, up to the checkered flag. Mattia Kolnagi becomes the first repeat winner in EUROCUP-3 in 2025. He wins race one at Paul Ricard, but what happened to Ernesto Rivera? He comes home in fourth off the podium because Valerio Rinicella takes second place to make it an MP Motorsport 1-2. And Kasper Stucker takes third for Griffincourt. So Ernesto Rivera ran deep into the final couple of corners before Virage du Pont. He was in second place. He was almost briefly attacking for the lead at one stage. And then drops back in the end and loses out on a top three finish. The championship leader has lost big points to Mattia Kolnagi. Kolnagi came into the weekend on 59 points. I think he's gained, it's 25 points for a win. Rivera still took the fastest lap point. And he finished fourth, so that's 12 points. That's a 13, possibly 12-point swing. So I think Kolnagi potentially, if we look at where Kasper Stucker finished, I think potentially Mattia Kolnagi might have taken the championship lead, because if you add the points together, I'll do some very rudimentary maths before we go to the results in a moment. So Kolnagi has now gotten from 59 points, add 25, use my rudimentary GCSE maths, funny because it's true, 84 points, I think that's put him on now. Kasper Stucker was on 61, and he's now got 18 points. That's 79. And Ernesto Rivera was Stucker was third. So that's 15 points. So that is Stucker on to 76 points. And Ernesto Rivera took 12 plus the fastest lap. So that is 13 points. So that is 81 points compared to Kolnagi, who has now taken himself on to 84. So I think there's been a change of the championship lead. I think all of that happening in the last couple of laps has given Mattia Kolnagi, by my maths, provisionally, the championship lead. It should be with 84 points, as I calculate. And Ernesto Rivera, I think he's now on 81. And Stucker is now on 15 points. So that is 1:26. So I think it's now Kolnagi that leads, Rivera in second place, and Stucker in third. So Kolnagi with that victory and everything that went on behind him has actually given him the championship lead, and he's leapfrogged, I think, both Rivera and Stucker. I'm sure that Alex and co will confirm that with their numbers after the race. But what a start to the weekend. And it was a bit of a slow burn in that race. Of course, there was a couple of moments in the beginning, but then just that slow burn, the last couple of laps, just something had to light the match, and there it went. And it was the attack from Rivera, and he had that battle with Stucker and fell backwards in the race. And then it's just those last couple of laps where everything kicked off, and it was pretty extraordinary to watch. So, fortunately, Mr. Rivera is not going to pull up in the top 3 position. But pulling up into third place is going to be Kasper Stucker. So that's one for the Polish drive ones on the field. And you can see there Néstor Rivera not quite pulling up in the top 3. He's there just in the background in 4th. He'll be kicking himself after that. We didn't see exactly why he ran wide. There was an issue or just simply out braking himself. But he'll be frustrated with that. But pulling up to board number 1 for the second time this season, the first repeat winner is Mattia Kolnagi, the Italian for MP Motorsport. And look at that. He'll look beside him and thinking, oh, hello there, where'd you come from? It is an MP Motorsport 1-2. But the key thing on that headline is he stands on top of the car. Victory, P1 for Mattia Kolnagi, the half Italian, half Argentine. An amazing effort, and his fellow Italian, Valerio Ricard. So it's not only an MP Motorsport 1-2, it's an Italian 1-2 at the top of the field as well. Congratulations from his mechanics all round. And I'm sure there'll be some handshakes as well from Néstor Rivera after a strong battle at the front. Kasper Stucker should be absolutely delighted with third place. It is his 4th podium of the season, his third place of the season. Best result of the season was back in Red Bull Ring Race 1 with second place. But amazing stuff and great battling. And I dare say that when we eventually are ready to hand down to Alex Garcia, he'll have a great chat with the top 3 to see how they felt about that race. And as I said, there was quite a lot of that period where we were waiting for the battles to happen, and then right towards the end when they started to really kick off, when you saw Rivera attacking Kolnagi, then the cars behind started to come into the mix, then Stucker attacked for second place, briefly got it, then he handed it back. And then there was the whole scrap in the last couple of laps, and it was Stucker with that incredible pass around the outside to take second place. It was a magnificent one, at least initially he did. And then Ricciardo got himself into the mix and got himself up there too. So an MP Motorsport 1-2. Rest of the order I can see Néstor Rivera was 4th. Hesse Carrasquedo was the 2nd. Griffin Core car home in 5th position. Enzo Tarvanichkul was 6th. Then Maciej Blanic 7th. Francisco Macedo 8th. James Agozzi 1 place up from where he started in 9th. And Andreas Cardenas rounding out of the top 10. So handshakes and hugs and smiles all round from the 2 Italians. MP Motorsport will be delighted with that, I'm sure. And I think now that he's in position, I think we can certainly hand down to Alex Garcia, who is with, I'm certain, a very delighted second-time winner this season, Mattia Kolnagi. He's down in the pit lane with Alex. How does he feel, Alex?
Mattia, first repeat winner of 2025. Not too bad, is it?
Yeah, very good comeback after the difficult weekend in Portimao, so very happy with this.
Did you expect things to go as smoothly in the end, or after Portimao, I mean? Or were you a little bit expecting to see how things went?
I wasn't really sure. We had a difficult weekend in Portimao, just struggling a bit with pace. And obviously we worked well on Thursday and Friday to come back. And obviously I think it paid off because we were able to win. And also Valerio in P2, so that was very good for the team. Happy.
An important point to start, of course.
Yeah, very important point for the championship, and obviously a win is always nice to have also in the record books. So yeah, couldn't be happier.
More to come later, more to come tomorrow. How you do with the heat as well? Long weekend, isn't it?
Yeah, sprint race will be fun, starting P11. I'll see how many positions I can make up, but I think I will try to keep it calm in that one.
Should we make a bet? How many positions do you think you can gain in the sprint?
I think it depends a lot on how many safety cars and how many people crash in lap 1. So we'll see. I'm not going to say anything.
Okay, we take your word and we see it later. Enjoy the win, Mattia.
Thank you.
So the race winner for this first of the 3 races we have this weekend, Mattia Kolnagi, who is cautiously optimistic for the sprint race later. But for the time being, first repeat winner of this 2025. That is an important one for the championship, and if he wanted to make a statement, that was the way to make it.
Yeah, it certainly was, and as I mentioned in the commentary, a bit of a slow burn that race. It was certainly a race where Kolnagi had to really hold on for the position. We're watching some of the highlights from the race that we saw just now. It was a frantic first couple of moments, but we saw an early safety car because of Oscar Wirtz getting tangled up with Abkejava, and after the safety car, it was pretty much a lot of action going back and forth in that fight, as we saw everyone closed up in the first few minutes, whilst racing was closed up, and it was still Matti Kolnagi holding on to the lead as much as possible through that safety car period, and a chance for the driver just to kind of take a moment's respite after an all-adrenaline opening lap. We saw, of course, Oscar Wirtz and Alexander Abkejava out of the race initially, but when racing got back underway, the main story of the race was the back and forth between Matti Kolnagi and Ernesto Rivera, the MP Motorsport and Campos drivers back and forth, and there was an early attack in the opening stages after the safety car from Rivera on the tail, but he wasn't able to initially get past, and that gap never really extended by more than 6 or 7 tenths a lap as they went through the race. There was also battles between the scrap for third place with Kasper Stucker and Valerio Rinicella, and it was going into the closing stages of the race where everything started to really kick off as the race continued on. There was moments when that kind of gap accordioned a bit. It went back and forth between Kolnagi and Ernesto Rivera, closing in the final couple of laps to really put an attack on, and that's when it really started to kick off. The DriveX car is not really where they wanted to be in this race, but still they pushed on quite hard. That was just saw there briefly Preston Lambert for DriveX. He's finished back in 23rd. And also trying to make his way through the order after a pretty rough start was the 24. That was Ernesto Rivera watching on that side of things. The race continued on, and still the advantage held by Kolnagi in the end, as the rest of the cars for Santa. It was Kasper Stucker there who held himself into third place initially. And as the battle continued on, it was still back and forth within the top two. But then in the closing stages, Rivera started to get close, and it all started to really go back and forth, particularly as we saw Kasper Stucker and Ernesto Rivera battling in the mix. And in the end, it was victory for Matti Kolnagi, the first repeat winner, and of course now not only a double MP Motorsport podium, first and second, but a double Italian podium, first and second on top of that too. And Kasper Stucker will be very delighted as well with third place for Griffin Court. He will certainly take that and go forward to race 2 a little bit later on. So you can see that I think Ernesto Rivera just been comforted by his team there. He was certainly, he possibly could have gone on for at least battling for a victory, if not for a podium, but just missing out at the final couple of corners that saw him lose out on that one. But he'll be back. He'll be back for race 2. He'll be trying to go for a better result this time by, as we're getting set for the podium very, very shortly. And they'll be calling them up in reverse order. And so onto the podium in third place, representing Poland, and Griffin Court will go in a moment's time. Kasper Stucker, and a bit of a smile for Ernesto Rivera after his great battle with Matti Kolnagi. And even he can give a round of applause. He's disappointed, but he is magnanimous in defeat. He'll come back. He has a win to his name as well. But applause all round as the podium is set to get underway. And there, third place taking his spot on the podium. Kasper Stucker, his 4th podium of the season. His third place of the year. And he'll be certainly delighted with good points to keep himself in the championship fight. Even though he may, we think, on my at least initial calculations, has dropped down to 3rd. 2nd place for Valerio Rinicella. He'll be happy with that. That will have been 18 big points for him. That will have leapt him up to what I think will cost around about 66 points. But your race winner for the 2nd time this season, and the first multiple winner in 2025. It is, of course, Mattia Kolnagi of MP Motorsport. So he will certainly enjoy this victory. MP Motorsport will enjoy the sight of 2 orange livery drivers. And I think we are about to hear the national anthem of the winning driver from Italy.
le trophée au meilleur team MP Sport.
The Italian national anthem ringing out for our race winner of race 1 of the weekend for the EUROCUP-3 championship here at Paul Ricard. The trophies will be presented in reverse order. Of course, there'll be a trophy to the winning team. The representative from MP Motorsport takes the trophy. Congratulations to the Dutch squad for another victory this season. Of course, there is the battle in the team's standings, and they came into the weekend with the lead. Prior to the weekend, they had a 9-point lead over Campos. Third place to Kasper Stucker, 4th podium of the season, and that certainly is good, solid points for the championship. A couple of great moves in that race, and he will certainly be looking to make that happen better next time by. The second place trophy going to Valerio Rinicella. And looking at his results so far this season, that's his 2nd podium of the year. And his best result of the season, finishing 2nd. His best one had been the sprint race at Portimao with 3rd. But the winner's trophy for the 2nd time this year. And as we say, our first repeat winner of 2025 from MP Motorsport representing Italy is Matteo Colnaghi. He is victorious in race 1 of the weekend at Paul Ricard here in the south of France. And as is usual, F1 gathers on the top step of the podium for the group shot in the sunshine this morning at Paul Ricard. They're actually going to the lunch break shortly before the next round. And then a few more podium shots. And then a few more pictures before I think we know what's coming next. Top 3 all together. And again, just bringing in the representative MP Motorsport. Of course, the next race coming up here this weekend for our programme is going to be the first race of the weekend for the F4 Spanish Championship. You can tune in for that on the F4 Spanish YouTube channel. I think we're getting more photos at the top there, so quite popular with the cameras down there on the podium. And the second EuroCup-3 race of the weekend is the sprint race, which is the 20-minute plus 1 lap race with a reduced number of points for that one. And that's at roundabout local time, around about 25 to 2. So wherever you're watching, whether it's if you're watching, for example, in the UK where I am, that'll be 25 to 3. But I think, as anticipated, there'll be one thing they want to do, at least I thought they would have done. No, they're keeping it for next time by, I think. Not quite wanting to get champagne over their overalls. Nonetheless, of course, you have to remember some of these drivers are junior drivers, so they can't quite use this. So, that is race 1 in the books. Bit of a slow burn, but we got the action in the end, and it was an excellent battle all the way to the flag. And we saw victory for the 2nd time this season for Matteo Colnaghi. Now the big question is, what does the sprint race hold? It's the 2nd sprint race of the season. That's coming up in a couple of hours' time. Of course, whilst that happens, we're waiting for that. You can also watch the opening race of the season for the weekend, for the F4 Spanish Championship here at Paul Ricard. Go and check them out on their YouTube channel with myself and Alex on commentary and pit lane duties for that. But for the time being, from a very sunny Paul Ricard, from all of us here in France and on broadcast, myself, Scott Woodward, and Alex Garcia, and everyone at EuroCup-3, thanks for watching, and we will catch you in a few hours' time for the sprint race later on here at Paul Ricard. But until then, we'll talk to you later on. Bye for now.